This is Ktn Prime. Thanks for making time. Let's get you informed. I'm Jesse Rogers. Meresha Witi is our sign language interpreter. Now, DCP leader Rigathi Gachagua has maintained that he will kickstart his weekend political engagements with a tour of Emurua Dikir on Friday, as he seeks to woo voters in the region to rally behind the opposition. However, the former deputy president has alleged a plan to curtail his trip by a section of leaders led by Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen, but maintains he remains unbowed despite the threats. As Ian Keitani now details, a section of Emurua Dikir residents have condemned plans to disrupt the scheduled rallies tomorrow. They argue that the DCP party leader is free to campaign in the region, calling on the Inspector General of Police, Douglas Kanja, to ensure his safety.
Barely a month after hosting leaders drawn from the South Rift region at his Wamunyoro residence, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is expected to tour the vast South Rift, a region perceived to be President William Ruto's political bedrock, to popularize his party and vouch for the opposition. However, barely a day after a group of youth dared him to tour Emurua Dikir constituency, the DCP leader now says he will not be cowed by threats and will be making his way to the South Rift on Friday. He alleges that Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen and the newly elected area legislator are the masterminds of the plot to cause mayhem and disrupt his tour of the region.
Mimi kesho naenda huko pahali inaitwa Emurua Dikir kutembelea wakipsigis wa college. Wameniita huko, wamehangaishwa na Kasongo. Wameniambia Irrigation ukuja utusugumuzie. Huyu waziri anaitwa Kipchumba Murkomen anapea pesa mjumbe ya huko ati Irrigation asikanyange huko. Wakana jini wamenipigia simu, wamesema kuja tutakulinda.
Gachagua blasted Inspector General Douglas Kanja over the rising cases of violence and his inability to walk the talk and crack the whip on Guionism. The DCP boss maintains that should anything happen to him tomorrow, the police boss should be held accountable.
Wewe Douglas Kanja, umetumika vibaya na Kasongo. Tangu kuwa IG, Kenya imekuwa nchi ya mihuni. Huwezi jua tofauti ya goons na polisi. Nimekuandikia barua leo IG Kanja. Nikakwambia nitakuja Emurua Dikir. Nikakwambia Murkomen anapanga fujo. Wewe Kanja, kazi yako ni weke askari ya kutosha ya kuweka amani.
Meanwhile, a section of Emurua Dikir constituents have cautioned those planning to cause chaos in Gachagua's political engagement in the constituency on Friday. The residents have blasted leaders and locals behind the plot, maintaining that the government must ensure the former second-in-command is safe during his tour of the region.
Tunapata kwa viongozi wetu ambao wamekosa ya kusema ati ya kwamba ati ule nani Gachagua ama mtu wote ati has no right to be in Rift Valley. Who are you? As sahi tunasema Gachagua karibu Bomet.
Tunaomba waziri wa Interior, tafadhali kama Gachagua anakuja huko, pea security ya kutosha.
The sentiments come amid mounting pressure on Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen and Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja to resign over their failure to contain the goons menace ravaging the country. Gachagua's sentiments came during a Meet the People tour in Murang'a County, meant to popularize his party.
Harambe!
Ian Keitani, KTN, Nairobi.
Moving on, Education Cabinet Secretary Julius Migoso Gamba has raised concern over the growing use of ethnic rhetoric in political discourse, warning that the remarks are beginning to affect learners who have no role in the ongoing political contest. Our reporter Catherine Imuraget with the details.
Education Cabinet Secretary Julius Migoso Gamba has urged politicians to keep off education and exercise caution in their public utterances. The call was echoed by religious leaders who urged politicians to desist from ethnic remarks, saying such utterances deepen divisions at a time when political activity is intensifying across the country.
We have 11 million learners from ECD all the way to the university, spread across this country. So when you tell me, don't touch this, what do I do with those learners in that place? And yet, these learners or these young people do not share in those beliefs of us being different and of us not being Kenyan.
Kenya needs love. We are a multi-ethnic society. Tukubali bapema.
Speaking during the installation of Professor Kivutha Kibwana as the new Chancellor of International Leadership University at its Kitengela campus, Ogamba said education should remain a unifying space, warning that political rhetoric should not be allowed to interfere with the learning environment. He said political narratives around ethnicity, including the Don't Touch the Mountain campaign, associated with the DCP leader Gachagua and his allies, risk drawing innocent students into political divisions.
Maneno mnachecheza, maneno mnatupatupa, mnataka tuende wapi?
So when you tell us, don't touch this or the other, you shock us, because already we have touched.
The leaders also condemned corruption, calling for greater accountability and ethical leadership as the country prepares for another highly charged political period.
Corruption is killing us.
The leaders cautioned that political differences should not be allowed to spill into schools. Catherine Imuragit, KTN, Nairobi.
Now, the push by the opposition and two human rights groups, Kituo cha Sheria and Mathare Social Justice Center, may just open the Pandora's box as questions arise over the threshold of the allegations, loss of trust in the country's institutions, and the reawakening of international courts ghosts that bedeviled the country in the run-up to the 2013 general election. Constitutional and international law experts, however, warn the ICC should be the last resort. Just what awaits the country as a worrying trend of Gunism threatens the country's fabric amid the outcry for international attention? Alan Ochanda with the details.
The case by human rights groups Kituo cha Sheria and Mathare Social Justice Center, calling for the intervention of the International Criminal Court ICC, and now the opposition's plea to the court, may just open another face-off. The human rights groups have premised their case on the rampant abductions in the country, while the opposition says the spate of Gunism incidents can no longer be tolerated.
Court officer.
There are three ways into which the ICC may commence investigations on political and electoral violence.
On that note,
the investigations may stem from state referral, where a member country asks the prosecutor to look at crimes committed on its territory. The United Nations Security Council may also refer and ask the court to investigate a situation where the ICC prosecutor analyzes information from NGOs, victims, or reports like it was in the case with the Waki Commission during Kenya's 2007-2008 crisis, and requests permission from a pre-trial chamber to open a file.
It is possible in exceptional cases for individuals to request the ICC, or even institutions request the ICC to, on its own motion, take up an investigation of this kind. But I feel that our leaders should utilize the structures that we have put in place in the Constitution.
The International Court has thresholds and considers gravity, where a case must be of sufficient gravity to justify action by the court, evaluated through the scale, nature, manner of commission, and impact of the crimes. In terms of complementarity, the ICC is the last resort, and a case is only admissible if a state with jurisdiction is already genuinely investigating or prosecuting the case, unless the state is genuinely unwilling or unable. And finally, the court acts as a complementary in the interest of justice. In this case, the office of the prosecutor must confirm that opening an investigation or proceeding serves the interest of justice and the victims. For Kenya's case, the rampant spate of Gunism witnessed in opposition political gatherings, the opposition lays the blame squarely on President William Ruto, and that they have no trust left in the relevant agencies. And even after President William Ruto assured that the vice will be tamed, the talk remains just that.
Goons and all these other characters, criminals, should be stopped.
We call upon the office of the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, ICC, to closely monitor developments in Kenya and to undertake a preliminary assessment of whether credible information exists warranting examination under the Rome Statute, especially against the person bearing the greatest responsibility, namely President William Samoei Ruto.
The reason we were trying to use rule of law because we don't want Kenyans to organize themselves to beat up goons, because there's going to be more bloodshed. We don't want Kenyans to form their own vigilantes to protect themselves, because if they do that, then it's going to be a bloodbath. And that's why we're saying, Mr. President and your incompetent minister, Murkomen, if you have a bit of common sense, act before Kenyans act.
It is true that Kenyans have lost trust in some of our institutions to deal with cases, especially that have a lot of political connection. They are feeling that the police service is being kind of like co-opted by one side of the political contestation.
The ICC petition may just rekindle the memories of the 2007, where post-election violence saw some top leaders, including the 4th and 5th Kenya's presidents, charged but released for lack of evidence. Alan Ochanda, KTN.
Kenya's independent institutions are facing growing scrutiny over allegations that they're losing their independence and bending to the will of the government of the day. From the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions to Parliament, a series of recent developments has raised serious questions over whether institutions created to protect the public interest are now serving those in power, leaving ordinary Kenyans with nowhere to turn to. Our reporter, Haman Kamariki, reports.
Kenya's independent institutions are supposed to be the guardrails of democracy. Bodies powerful enough to hold the government to account and protect the ordinary citizen from abuse of power. But critics say those guardrails are now being weakened. The National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, is one institution increasingly accused of lacking authority or the political muscle to enforce its mandate. Politicians aligned to the government have on several occasions been accused of ignoring its summonses, effectively daring the commission to act. Health Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, and Homa Bay Town Member of Parliament Peter Kaluma are among politicians who have previously been accused of failing to honor summonses by the commission.
If we continue with such politicians in this country, then it means that we are going into the wrong trajectory. And of course, if we have Peter Kalumas, even within the government, doing the same thing, then when it comes to 2027, it will be worse than 2007.
I don't see enough independence on these commissions. Look at the budgets. They need to have enough independent budget. There are powers, there are some gaps. They don't have prosecuting powers. And that is why let's say the National Cohesion Commission, it can summon Duale and he can say, I will not come until Gachagua comes.
Other institutions, including the Anti-Corruption EACC, the ODPP, IPOA, and IEBC, have also come under scrutiny. Critics accuse some of these institutions of losing their bite, appearing increasingly reluctant to confront the government, while the ordinary Kenyan is left to carry the burden of a system that seems increasingly tilted against them.
If somebody from EACC, for instance, the director or the CEO, receives a call from State House to prosecute a certain file and they are told to accelerate that matter, it means that these bodies are not free and fair. So when they are doing their selection, even from the appointments, these appointments should be reevaluated so that now it is not the mandate of the executive to make these appointments, but it is the role of the recruitment agencies.
Then there is Parliament, the institution expected to be the voice of the people. But in 2024, lawmakers faced intense criticism during the finance bill debate, with Kenyans accusing Parliament of turning a deaf ear to public anger and instead closing ranks around the government's position. The controversy went beyond the bill itself. There were allegations that key engagements were being coordinated from State House.
Wakati tulikuwa tunafukuza Gachagua kazi, kuna kitu ilitembea hapo.
But those are integrity issues, and you know, it is very shameful when you see somebody whom Kenyans have given a mandate and trust saying I was bribed. And he's happily saying it, and he's not even blinking an eye.
For many Kenyans, it became a painful reminder of what happens when those entrusted with their voice stop listening. For critics, such allegations point to a deeper crisis of accountability and ethics.
We need to work on the constitution, especially on the formation of those commissions. How are they appointed? As it is right now, Parliament will work on the vetting and all that. But at the end of the day, they will present not one name, but 3 names to the president for appointment. So why would the president appoint one of them?
Analysts now argue that under President William Ruto, the independence of key state agencies is increasingly being tested, with some institutions appearing to bend when political pressure is applied. The police and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, DCI, have particularly come under criticism of allegations of selective enforcement. Opposition figures are arrested, questioned and prosecuted, while individuals perceived to be close to power appear to escape similar scrutiny. The Office of Director of Public Prosecutions has also faced scrutiny over decisions to withdraw or abandon cases involving individuals accused of wrongdoing, particularly where their political allegiance appears shifted towards the government. Haman Kamariki, KTN.
Shifting focus, and investigators probing the helicopter accident that killed at least 7 people, including Ecuador's intelligence chief and his wife in Samburu County on Wednesday during a tourist excursion, are now narrowing down to 2 probable causes. According to the Aircraft Accidents and Investigation Department, much emphasis will be put on the human aspect and the state of the aircraft. And as Gloria Milimu now details, AAID says the preliminary investigations show that aircraft impacted terrain and was destroyed by impact forces and post-impact fire.
It is yet another accident that has shaken the aviation industry in Kenya. And Thursday, investigators probing the Wednesday crash that led to the death of 7 people, including a sitting spy chief from Ecuador and his wife, spent the better part of Thursday combing the scene of the accident for key components to aid with the ongoing investigations. The exercise, according to the Aircraft Accident Investigation Department, AAID, has been narrowed down to at least 2 major factors among 3 that are often relied on to help identify the probable cause of such accidents. Among the factors the investigators are probing is the pilot's competency, their qualification, training background, and whether they were qualified to operate the particular aircraft, among other human factors. The department's director, Fred Kabunge, who spoke to KTN via phone, also confirmed that his team is also investigating the state of the aircraft at the time of use. He says the probe will check certification of the vessel, its worthiness, date of manufacture, and whether or not it was transporting the number of people it is authorized to fly.
Once all this is done, then we would be guided then in terms of the activities to follow. This particular aircraft has no black box installed. The regulations, Kenya Civil Aviation Regulations, do not permit.
While the environmental aspect is a factor often also relied on for a definitive cause, the investigators say they won't be milking on that at this point.
We get into the environmental aspect, which would be dealing with the issues of weather, the issues of the aerodrome, but of course, this part of the world, one would not be forgiven to allude to the fact that weather was an issue. Indeed, the area of Samburu, weather can't be. So we may largely not be focusing on that.
The aircraft, carrying at least 7 people, including the pilot, that were on a scenic flight from a wildlife conservancy in Loisaba to Ewasinyiro, is said to have impacted terrain and was destroyed by impact forces and post-impact fire. The 7 include Ecuador's 44-year-old intelligence chief, Michel Sensi. He was a close friend to President Daniel Nobia. He took over Ecuador's Strategic Intelligence Board in 2014, and his department sits at the center of an ongoing security crisis in the South American country. He held a dual Italian and Ecuadorian nationality. His wife, Stephanie Holihan, was an Ecuadorian fashion designer and entrepreneur who founded Sense Studio in 2014. 4 of the deceased are said to be American nationals, who include 55-year-old Jose Suarez, who at the time of his death served as the president and general manager of several Telemundo television stations in Miami. Others include Miami food entrepreneur Rogers Duarte and the developer Adam Lavarti. The identity of the other 2 victims, including the pilot, is yet to be revealed. AAID says the United States National Transportation Board of America has also been roped in the ongoing investigations, whose preliminary report is expected to be released in the next 2 weeks, and thereafter a final report within a year. Gloria Milimu, KTN.
Well, preliminary investigations are ongoing even as flags fly at half-mast in Ecuador for 3 days. We say Paula to the affected families. Now, still to another sad story, a relationship, family tensions, and a chilling final message. Police in Mbeere South, Embu County, are investigating the deaths of a 35-year-old man and a 24-year-old woman believed to be lovers, whose bodies were found in a Mogoka farm in Wikaze village. The man was found hanging from a tree while the woman lay beneath a mango tree. What happened between their final evening together and the discovery of their bodies is now at the center of investigations. Ian Zive with the details.
Their final hours appeared ordinary. The two were reportedly seen together at a nearby shopping center the evening before their bodies were discovered. But the following day, a farm worker making his rounds stumbled upon the grim scene and alerted the farm owner, who called the police.
Alikuwa anashuhudia kweli atajinyonga, atajiua, kwani wazazi wampendi. Na kapia hore nyinyi wazali kwa irini, ndio pendo iliisha, hata yangu imeisha.
Investigators are also examining a video recorded by the man using a friend's phone. He reportedly spoke of family opposition to his relationship with the woman before making remarks suggesting his life was in danger. His uncle describes him as hot-tempered and says he had separated from his wife, with whom he had 2 children.
Wazazi wake walikuwa na msihi sana, akimwambia arudie watoto wake, mtu wao anateseka na huyu ana mtoto wake. Sasa wazazi wake walikuwa hata alikuwa anaomba huyu msichana, anawaambia vizuri arudi kwao. Juu yule wamekaa naye mtu asiye na mtu. Tena juu ya ile mapenzi walikuwa nao. Walikuwa wao wamependana hao wawili. Hawakuwa wanaachana, wakienda kila mahali wanaenda.
The bodies were transported to Embu Level 5 Hospital mortuary, where post-mortem examinations are expected to establish the cause and circumstances of the deaths. For now, investigators are working to establish what happened between that final evening and the discovery of the 2 bodies. Ian Zive, KTN.
Welcome back to KTN Prime. Thanks for staying with us. To the National Assembly now, where the Education Committee has concluded the vetting of former Kenya National Union of Teachers Secretary General Wilson Sossion, following his nomination as a commissioner of the Teachers Service Commission. Sossion defended his transition from a fierce union activist to policy regulator, promising to bridge the historical gap between teachers and their employer TSC. Fatma Chidagaya with more.
From leading bruising teachers' strikes on the streets to facing a parliamentary grilling across the table, Wilson Sosion's political and professional evolution came full circle as he stood before the National Assembly's Education Committee.
The country must invite itself.
Nominated by President William Ruto to serve as a was pressed on his credentials, but it was his financial declaration that caught attention and raised eyebrows over potential contradictions.
Your declared income, your SACCO savings of 4.51 million,
and SACCO earnings of 3.38 million. That's roughly about 8 million. Yet, your estimated net worth is at 65 million.
While declaring a net worth of 65 million shillings, comprising properties valued at 40 million, land worth 15 million, savings and a personal vehicle, analysts and lawmakers probed how a career trade unionists accumulated such a portfolio while championing struggling educators.
What was not included are things to do with my own house here and at home, that is, which are valued at around 40 million. That will be corrected, and land which valued around 15 million, and savings in my SACCOs and my car. If you do that mathematics, it comes up to 65 million.
Chaired by Tinderet MP Julius Smelly, the committee also sought assurances on its political neutrality and planned to resolve persistent friction between the Ministry of Education and the Commission.
My previous experience will not interfere with my work. I wish to say consciously, the work I did was to support the Commission so that it can support teachers. In 2011, I advocated for employment of teachers on permanent and pensionable terms.
The committee also vetted Antonina Lentoi-Johnny, experienced education insider, currently serving as the Director of Staffing at the Teachers Service Commission, with the results set to be tabled before the House. Fatma Chidagaya, KTN.
Thanks, Fatma. Moving on, getting a specialized test can mean a long trip for patients living far from referral hospitals. Now, portable diagnostic machines could bring some of those services closer home, as Eunice Omolo now reports.
For patients in remote areas, getting a specialized test can mean traveling for hours to find the right equipment. That adds to the cost and time of seeking care.
The major factors that affect how healthcare will be provided for in the next century to come, because health has to reach the people where they are.
Portable technology could change that. At the two-day Kenya Health Summit 2026, held at the Kenya International Convention Center in Nairobi, health technology providers showcased mobile and molecular diagnostic equipment designed to take services beyond conventional hospital settings.
That even rapid malaria tests can be done at the homes. This is in congruence with what we are doing now, just at a high advanced level, because molecular tests, they're very expensive and they're really hard to find. So this is a unique advantage, and one of the things that we were presenting, we would love to cooperate with in the Kenya Health Summit.
For remote communities, that could mean fewer trips, lower transport costs, and quicker access to testing. The equipment is also part of a growing push for locally made medical technology. For health workers, having the right diagnostic tools closer to community can support faster decisions on patient care.
This in Kenya will be able to achieve diagnostics at an even much affordable price, where we are talking about primary health care. Primary health care taken to the roots. This is how we do it, by making sure even the person at the farthest region is able to afford the cost of the testing.
The machines on display at the summit show how technology can take specialized diagnostic beyond hospital walls and closer to communities. The goal is to make distance less of a barrier to care. Eunice Omolo, KTN, Nairobi.
Now, resource inequities, weak foundation, and crowded classes are among the factors that are contributing to high levels of illiteracy in numerical and English language comprehension among grade 7 JSS learners in Kenyan schools. This is according to a report by the Usawa Agenda that shows 41% of grade 7 learners lack this basic foundational skills in grade 3 maths and language subjects. Bentura Kwamboka with that report.
High school levies, hangerbangs and staffing inequities are driving illiteracy among grade 7 learners in the country. According to education researchers, the recent survey by Usawa Agenda that puts 22% of grade 9 learners who cannot solve basic maths and 18% who cannot read with comprehension grade 3 books, non-payment of fees and extra levies are the leading drivers of learners' absenteeism that translate to low literacy level.
When that is happening, it gives both the learner and the teacher a difficult time. Because the teacher is in school today, they teach 20 or 30 out of 40 children. Tomorrow they teach another 30, but the 10 of those who are present are absent, 10 that were absent are present. So you don't even know where the class is at in terms of covering the curriculum.
Systemic vulnerabilities like severe infrastructure deficit is said to have a role too, where physical classroom attendance do not directly equate to cognitive learning.
Public schools are very few in the informal settlements, and so a lot of children there are going to what we call the low-cost private schools, which are themselves very under-resourced, and that has not changed over the years.
Further, teachers' deployment inequities is said to be heavily impacting education delivery, especially in marginalized regions.
For a long time, primary school teachers have been deployed. The ones who are almost retiring, they are tired, they're not going through any more in-service training, are the ones that have been deployed to the lower grades, so that the upper grades are given the learners, the teachers, who are young, who are energetic.
With education tasks most often requiring high cognitive load, hunger pangs have also been largely attributed to impairment of the literacy and numeracy skills.
We haven't put in place a school feeding program that would be able to address the challenges that attending lessons on an empty stomach pose.
Education stakeholders now want a holistic approach to fast-track a basic foundational comprehension for students.
We still need the non-repetition policy, but we shouldn't implement it rigidly. There should be circumstances where repeating is allowed, to allow children who may have had unique challenges in the year and therefore missed most of their learning time to still be in school. That is, I think, the area we need a good conversation to be able to establish a mechanism that complements the non-repetition policy to make sure that every level is accountable.
Bentura Komboka, KTN.
Quite worrying statistics right there. We definitely hope it is looked into to ensure that education remains the greatest equalizer. We now want to take a short break, but as we do so, let's take you through the front page of Kenya's bold newspaper, The Standard. This is what you'll be waking up to tomorrow, on your own. That's the headline. Speaks for itself. Defenseless, the institutions and people charged with protecting Kenyans have left them to their own devices. The National Police Service, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, and the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, as well as Parliament, have watched political violence spread from rallies to by-elections and even churches, with deaths, injuries, and destruction piling up while accountability remains elusive. Even the church seems unable to handle the situation. Kenyans are calling for politicians to behave and for the Inspector General of Police to quit. But that seems about it. Pages 2 and 3 have details and some of the men on focus in terms of leading these independent institutions and their role in quelling the skirmishes and political intolerance that keep on rearing its head time and time again. Details on that story, including that ongoing probe for the chopper crash that killed 6 VIPs right here in Kenya, specifically Samburu. That story on page 6 of tomorrow's edition of Kenya's bold newspaper, The Standard. Do make sure you grab yourself a copy. And for the football fans, EPL big kickoff. There's a pullout on the thrills and chills as the season starts. Make sure you grab yourself a copy. Welcome back to KTN Prime. Let's talk business news. Now, Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi has defended his assessment of the country's economy, saying it is performing better. CS Mbadi was speaking alongside the National Infrastructure Fund Board Chair James Moria as details emerged on how the fund will invest in commercially viable national projects. On the National Infrastructure Fund, Mbadi says only commercially viable projects will be considered, with the fund currently holding 340 billion shillings. He says the focus will be on capital preservation, liquidity, and ensuring investments generate returns within a reasonable timeframe. The fund will invest no more than 40% in one sector and 20% in a single project, while at least 60% of project capital is expected to come through debt. CS Mbadi says the fund will also bring in other investors and pool resources for major national projects. Board Chair James Moria says NIF should not be the sole investor in projects, but should instead mobilize additional capital and help fast-track national development.
Infrastructure that will be taking oil to its destination will be funded by this fund. The answer is yes and no. Yes, in the sense that it falls within the priority areas. But no, because I am not sure whether after being subjected, Honorable Rico, and this I'm not trying to discourage you, because the project will go through screening at all those levels. And if it is found to have met the threshold, it will be funded. And I agree with you that I'm just praying that this oil is sufficient enough to help us reduce our oil imports, which has put a strain on our forex reserve. So it is, in my view, from the face of it, commercially viable. But as to whether that will be the case will be determined by the board. And that will answer a question that I was asked, who makes the final decision? Final decision on investment is with the board. The project must be capable of mobilizing capital. If it is not, it does not qualify to be funded through National Infrastructure Fund. They must look at capital preservation in any decision that they make. And that is why they must look not just on return on investment, but also on exit and the period it will take. The holding period is very cardinal as one of the considerations for the project.
Moving on, Kenyans will be able to participate in the country's official national lottery starting April next year, if plans by the National Lottery Board, NLB, to procure an operator remain within schedule. Earlier today, the National Lottery Board appointed RSM Eastern Africa and Sweden-based Q-Lot Consulting as transaction advisors. According to board chairperson Farida Karonei, the two firms will support the board in the procurement of a national lottery operator in a process expected to open up new business. Karonei says the National Lottery is a platform to promote good causes in the communities across the country.
Our goal is to leave the National Lottery Board with not only a successful procurement outcome, but also stronger institutional capacity for future procurements and effective operator oversight.
The operator will be tasked with introducing an affordable, innovative, and nationwide accessible lottery that will be built on a framework of transparency and trust. They will need to operate and to achieve the highest possible level of international standards of responsible gaming and player protection.
The National Lottery Board is established under the National Lottery Act of 2023 with one dedicated purpose: to establish, oversee, safeguard Kenya's national lottery, to procure and to contract the national lottery operator, and to administer the National Lottery Fund. Allocation will be rules-based and governed by regulations, and it will be competitively assessed. It will be geographically equitable. The whole country contributes to the national lottery, and therefore the whole country must benefit from its proceeds.
Now, African entrepreneurship is gaining momentum, with more businesses moving beyond startup ideas to build revenue-generating enterprises across the continent. 20 entrepreneurs from 12 African countries are in Nairobi this week, representing businesses that generated a combined $85 million in revenue last year. Their stories offer a glimpse into the growing scale and diversity of Africa's private sector, even as entrepreneurs continue to grapple with access to capital.
Yeah, numbers tell us only so much. What makes this cohort exciting? It's what these entrepreneurs are actually building. As you have seen, some are making healthcare more accessible and strengthening food and agriculture systems. They are building new technologies. I'm thinking of Remedy. They are creating jobs, opening access to markets and capital. And we call them heroes because they have not waited for someone else to solve these problems. They are building the solutions.
But for Africa, I believe the opportunity is much bigger than simply adopting AI. We should be asking ourselves, what will Africa build in this AI era? Let us not only build products on top of infrastructure created elsewhere in the world.
The scale of the business matters. Is this something that you're building that can be taken much wider, much further? Can it go beyond the borders that you're in now? Can others even learn and even start other businesses by what you're doing?
Kenya must rapidly expand irrigation if it is to feed its growing population, with the government stepping up investments to harvest runoff from seasonal rivers, harness water from rivers, build and rehabilitate dams, and tap groundwater through deep boreholes. Agriculture and Livestock Development Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe says Kenya's population will continue growing, making it necessary to produce more food from every available acre and reduce dependence on increasingly unreliable rainfall.
Wanaendelea kuwa wengi. Idadi ya watu inaendelea kuwa nyingi ya juu. Lakini mashamba tumeona ya kwamba tukiendelea vile tulivyo bila maji, bila irrigation, ni kusema ya kwamba we will not be able to feed the population of Kenya. Wakati huu wa ukame, vile sisi tumejifunza ni kwamba ni lazima kama serikali tunajitayarisha. Kuna watu wanaona ukame wanakuwa na uoga. Wanaona jameni, hapa tutakosa chakula. Miaka mbili, mwaka moja utapokuja.
Lazima tuweke hamasa. Hamasa ni kwamba sisi wenyewe tuweze kushikana kama community ili kuhakikisha tulinde huu mradi. Tumeona wale ambao wameweza kupata mradi huu, wakajaribu yale maji, wameweza kupata mavuno pale. Hebu tupige macho pande ule. Si tunaona mahindi yani. Kwa hivyo huu mchango umebarikiwa au kubarikiwa?